Violent protests in Bristol. The police are targeted, a van is set on fire and a police station under siege. Several officers are injured. The clashes are over plans to give police more powers to deal with peaceful protests. We'll bring you the latest live from the city as the protests continue tonight. Also on the programme, don't book your summer holidays just yet. The government gives a strong hint that breaks abroad may be unlikely. And a developing story tonight fears the EU is preparing to block the export of vaccines to the UK. Plus,
Henderson won't get to that, and it's headed in at the back.
Leicester beat Man United to get through to the semi-finals of the FA Cup for the first time in almost 40 years.
This is ITV News with Kylie, Pentelow.
Good evening. A demonstration in Bristol against plans to give police more powers to deal with protests has erupted into violence tonight. Officers have been injured as the protesters scaled a police station, set alight a van and threw missiles and fireworks into the crowds. Thousands had gathered in the city earlier in the day peacefully, but as night fell, the protests turned violent and riot police were deployed. Well, tonight, the Home Secretary condemned the violence. Priti Patel tweeted, "Thuggery and disorder by a minority will never be tolerated." Mark McQuillan has our report.
Police had urged them not to come, but they did in their thousands. Kill the bill, they had chanted. That in relation to a plan to give police more powers over protests. But after a peaceful march, this one in Bristol escalated through the evening, as some clashed with officers, while others exerted anger and frustration in other ways. Graffiti was sprayed, and officers confronted as they battled to defuse the situation. But some weren't going to go quietly, with fireworks thrown and police vans set on fire, while a group scaled the police station in the city centre, and some appeared to try and gain access to it by force. Tonight's scenes have been widely condemned, and for the majority who have demonstrated peacefully, it will be the actions of a minority that will be remembered, highlighting the serious challenges police can face whilst tackling their daily duties. Mark McQuillan, ITV News.
Well, our West of England correspondent Rupert Evelyn is in Bristol tonight. So, Rupert, what's the situation there now?
Well, Bristol is in a lockdown tonight. The centre of Bristol is in a lockdown of a different type. The police are here now in force. There is a very tense atmosphere. It's not quite the scenes, of course, that we've seen from a few hours ago, but you sense that there is a spark could be lit again here at any point. The smell in the air of those burnt out police vehicles, that still hangs around. There are quite a few hundred people here. Occasionally bottles are still being targeted towards the police. So as it stands at the moment, we've got what I would describe as an on-edge atmosphere right here in the heart of Bristol. It feels like this thing could set off again at any time, but of course the police are in now numbers in force and they're in for the long haul.
And Rupert, what do you know about any injuries to police officers there?
Well, Avon and Somerset Police put out a statement just half an hour ago in which they told us that one police officer has suffered a broken arm, another has suffered broken ribs. Both of them have been taken to hospital. We're not aware of any more injuries than that. Of course, with that level of violence has been condemned both here in the city and around the United Kingdom tonight. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, said the scenes here in Bristol are unacceptable. Thuggery and disorder, she says, by a minority will never be tolerated. She said our police officers put themselves in harm's way to protect us all, and her thoughts are with all of those. But tonight here in Bristol, this is a city on edge and likely to be so for some hours to come.
Rupert Evelyn, thank you very much. Next tonight, the government has given its strongest hint yet that holidays abroad this summer may be in doubt. The Defence Secretary said a new wave of coronavirus cases on the continent, along with concerns about travellers bringing back new variants, is worrying, and urged everyone to be patient until a review into when they'll be allowed is published. And there are fears tonight the EU is preparing to block the export of vaccines to the UK. We'll have more on that in a moment. First, here's our political correspondent Carl Dinnan on the caution over trips abroad.
If you dream of sand dunes and salty air, well, they might have to be British this year, because it's far from certain that the government task force looking at foreign travel will allow holidays anywhere warmer this summer.
What we don't want is all our hard work, whether you're an NHS staff or the taxpayer or the rest of the country, in trying to keep on top of this pandemic, is undermined by a new variant getting imported because we lifted it too quickly.
So it's too early to say whether they will be allowed.
Too early. Let's see how these task force reports in April.
And it would be unwise to book a holiday now.
I haven't booked a holiday, and I would recommend that as much as the temptation is massive to want to have a holiday, and we all want a holiday after this, I think I'd say first and foremost that I would urge let's wait to see where you get in April, May, and then we can reflect on it.
The Government Travel Task Force will report on the 12th of April, but the earliest any international holidays will be allowed is the 17th of May. Domestic restrictions in England could all be lifted by June the 21st, and some travel companies say it is safe to book now.
I think that people can start booking holidays now. I mean, we in Thomas Cook will give you your money back, or will rebook your holiday if it turns out that the holiday is cancelled for coronavirus reasons. I think a number of other companies are in the same position. So actually taking advantage of rates now is relatively risk-free.
But is taking a holiday? Hardly anywhere else in the world has yet managed to vaccinate as many people as the UK. And anyway, vaccination is no guarantee of safety.
What would you say to someone who says, look, I've been vaccinated, my family's been vaccinated, all my friends have, why can't I go off to Greece for a couple of weeks in the summer?
We need to remember, actually, it's under 3% of the population that's received 2 doses, and it's about 38% of the population that's received a single dose. Even if you are vaccinated, there is absolutely no guarantee that you can't catch the virus and transmit it to others. We've seen several cases around the world where people who are vaccinated have been able to do that because there is no 100% protection against transmission.
So it is very far from clear how much the foreign holiday ban will be lifted from the middle of May, and whether or not there will be any change to the quarantine requirements for people returning from abroad.
And Carl is with me. So, Carl, this so-called vaccine war seems to have escalated in the last hour or so.
That's right. This relates to a specific site in the Netherlands where the AstraZeneca vaccine is being produced. And according to the Financial Times, the European Union is considering blocking exports of the vaccine from that site to the UK. Now, this comes off the back of the Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, saying that a ban was possible and that AstraZeneca needed to fulfill its contract with the EU before exporting to other countries, basically meaning the UK. There is considerable unhappiness within the EU over the fact that supplies of the AZ vaccine in particular have been much smoother to this country than they have been to the EU, although, of course, from the government's perspective here, that's because Britain got in much earlier and just negotiated stronger contracts. So EU leaders will have to decide towards the end of the week, probably on Thursday, whether or not they want to go ahead with such a ban. And it seems, Carl, the government's facing a backbench backlash over
possible plans to extend the coronavirus legislation for another 6 months.
That's right. This is also on Thursday when the government will come to the House of Commons seeking permission to extend those restrictions for another 6 months. Conservative backbenchers in particular are very uneasy, and some of them are now saying that they will vote against because they believe that with the vaccine rollout, the government doesn't need to have such draconian powers all the way through until September. At the moment, the Labour Party are saying that although they have some reservations, they will support the extension, so it will go through.
OK, Carl, thank you. In Florida, officials have imposed an emergency curfew in Miami Beach after spring break crowds trashed restaurants, started fights in the street. Police fired pellets at partygoers to try to disperse the gatherings. The interim city manager says he wants the overnight curfew to stay in place until the middle of next month. The Australian government has declared a natural disaster in large parts of New South Wales. After the worst flooding in decades, thousands have had to flee their homes, including areas around Sydney. And if you haven't filled in the census yet, you've got just under 2 hours to do so. All households in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are required by law to fill in the survey, which is taken every 10 years to help the government with planning. The census has been delayed in Scotland for a year because of the pandemic. On to sport now, and Leicester are through to the semi-finals of the FA Cup for the first time in almost 4 decades after beating Manchester United 3-1. Chelsea are also into the last 4 thanks to a 2-0 win over Sheffield United. Will Mott watched all the action.
With so little to choose between them in the league, Manchester United's cup tie at Leicester really stood out, mostly for their defending. Fred with a very unwanted early assist. Kelechi Iheanacho, the grateful recipient. United did find a way back in, the precision of Paul Pogba's cross matched by Mason Greenwood's finish. The United defence was still in generous mood after half-time. Yuri Tielemans given plenty of space and time to pick his spot. Leicester's third came from Iheanacho again. Unchallenged but uncompromising at the back post, they'll meet Southampton in their first FA Cup semi-final for 39 years. After the season they've had, Sheffield United were looking for some escapism at Stamford Bridge. Unfortunately, Oliver Norwood's outstretched leg soon brought them back to reality.
And deflected into his own net for an own goal.
Chelsea haven't conceded at home in over 10 hours of football. Midway through the second half, David McGoldrick, incredibly, kept that record intact.
McGoldrick's missed it!
Hakim Ziyech showed them how it's done when he made it 2 in injury time. Manchester City await Chelsea in the last 4. Will Mott, ITV News.
And that is it from me and all of the weekend team for now. The weather forecast is coming up next for the coming week. But for now, enjoy what's left of the evening. Good night.